Okay, so hello, I'm Amir from the Psychedelic Society, and I feel really lucky to have been watching Jade film this masterclass for the last 2 days, this introduction to Astral Projection. And you've just taken us through all this really amazing material, so thank you. You've just amassed a wealth of knowledge from so many cultures, it's really obvious. Yeah. And I think also for many people watching this will have the same question as me. It sounds like something that's so out there that, and I'm someone who meditates and I've taken psychedelics and I've heard some really strange stories from people, but still this idea of actually leaving my physical body. I don't know, to be honest, I guess I'm not sure, can I really learn this? Like I still feel like I have doubts, and I'm thinking if I have doubts, then I'm sure like the general public would as well. What could you say to that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people think, having an out-body experience is your soul or your spirit leaving the body and you go into astral planes and planets, and it's actually a little bit more down to earth than that. It's actually probably not as far out or mystical or as some people might think. So it's really an experience of self-awareness sort of seeming to project beyond the body. We don't actually know if anything leaves, so to speak, but that's certainly the feeling, this sense of separation. Like, when you hear people in a near-death experience, I was floating out of my body and I saw this and then I went there and I verified this experience. It's very much like that. So it feels like really going somewhere.
Wow.
And maybe we are. I mean, who knows?
What do you think?
I actually think it's both, because although I try not to lend myself to a belief system such as shamanism or spiritualism or Buddhism, I kind of do tend to lean towards consciousness is somehow interacting malleable with reality. So actually, and we think about quantum physics, maybe something is leaving and it's not leaving at the same time.
Right.
Like Schrodinger's cat in the box, So maybe we're humanly having this experience, this dualistic notion of I'm going somewhere, but on an ultimate level, are we really going somewhere? Yeah. Or are we maybe tapping into something because
but for you it's real in the sense that you can retrieve information that you verify later. It's like, I haven't just hallucinated a dream.
Yeah.
There's something real happening as far as you're concerned.
Yeah. It's a very real experience. In fact, a lot of people say it felt realer than real. I had a kind of a celebrity actress get in touch with me through a magazine I did an article for, and I went to meet her, and she'd been very affected by her experience because she kept saying, it just felt so real. It felt so real. It definitely wasn't a dream. And you find this, people go, definitely wasn't real, and it was a dream. It was real.
Wow.
And they have this kind of profound inner gnosis, inner knowing from that. So it is very. This is why people with a near-death experience, when they come back from it, it completely changes their life. That you don't get that after having a vivid dream.
And you talked about these potential blocks, which someone might be fears. And actually, I think that's one of the things that's created like an inner fear. Because if you'd said it's basically hallucination, it's like a dream. Like I wouldn't be scared of a lucid dream. But when I'm lying in bed, like last night, I slept terribly, and I was thinking, maybe I'll try roll out. I think part of me is like, what if I really do roll out? Like, it's scary. Like, if it is real, the notion that it is real, is it something you could say to maybe calm my nerves or anyone else that has that, like, wow, I'm actually leaving my body. This is quite intense.
Yeah, it can feel intense, and a lot of beginners get scared, especially when you feel the vibrational state, which can be quite intense. So this is the state that we speak about, where you're just about to have that sense of separation, or you're going somewhere, and you might feel lots of vivid sensations that can be very overwhelming. So it can be scary. But what I can tell you, and I feel like I can confidently speak on behalf of myself and most of the top teachers in the world, which I've spoken to, will say it's safe and you are always ultimately in charge.
And you always come back.
You always come back to your body because of this notion, nothing is effectively fully leaving. Okay. And in the Toltec tradition, they talk about it's an aspect of your consciousness leaving. Your life force, that is, which is you, your soul, they say it's around this area, that remains. And your perception of where we appear to be in space, that's what leaves and travels. But the rest of the energy centers, they say within this tradition, stay within the body.
It's interesting because I think at Psychedelic, we had a course on the northern, it's not called shamanic, but the northern spiritual traditions from before Christianity, and the same thing, I think they had 9, the Vikings had 9 different souls. So one stays in the body after death, and that's the one you go speak to if you go to a grave, and another one might travel around, another one has is the spirit animal. So interesting that we've kind of maybe impoverished in our culture with this idea of one soul. It's like maybe there's 9 or 10, and one of them roams about. And then I guess the other fear that I notice inside, which you might be able to help me with, is, oh, what if I get really good at this? It's the opposite one. I kind of get addicted to it, and I, this whole spiritual bypassing thing, and every time life gets a bit hard, I'm just off like talking to aliens in some other dimension. Is that a real problem? Does that actually happen for people?
Yeah, I think you have to be pretty skilled to be able to have lots of experiences, and you can get to that point. There is a sort of domino snowball effect where there's a tipping point where you have so many that you become more adept. And I do actually, a student comes to mind who had a lot of experiences and did use it, actually 2 students, for escapism. And you know what? I think if someone's in extreme pain and extreme suffering, for that period, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Like we use video games for escapism.
Yeah,
we
so it's
use
like, why not?
Netflix for escapism.
Yeah.
So in that moment, for a bit of time, I think it's okay.
30-day subscription. Yeah.
Subscribe to the Astral Projection channel. But not for an extended period. I think that serves a purpose for that reason in that moment, and then we have to come back to earth, back to our life, back to our body, and really integrate, ground and embody what we've learned, so we can be our best sense of self in this life, in this lifetime, in the here and now.
And I guess on the same question, okay, so if I've left my body and I've traveled to other realms and I've experienced other aspects of reality, do you still get a sense that, because what you just said is like it becomes concrete and real when it serves this reality here, this kind of day-to-day existence. But is this more important actually than what's going on in other realms? Does that make sense? Like, is it all one thing, or is this reality somehow where it all comes together in a way that is more important than what happens on some other plane? Maybe that's too deep.
No, that's a really good question. I've never been asked that question before.
Oh, good.
So that's really nice. I don't feel kind of qualified to answer that because I'm actually still working that out myself.
Right.
So I'm still working that out. But I think it's a very dualistic way, in a way, of thinking about it. Well, is one better than the other? Yeah. Because we think like that as humans. We think black, white, good,
my
bad.
human experience is the real thing and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, are they not interdependent? Yeah. Are they not simultaneously somehow cooperating the same space in time and space at the same time? So I lean towards that neither is better or worse, but they're interlinked. And you find in a lot of the shamanic traditions, they say, what happens in the astral planes has a direct knock-on correlation to this reality. So
it's like different aspects of the same reality, and it's not one is superior to the other.
No, and I think, you go in some traditions, a tendency to say there are higher planes and you can make your way up almost like a hierarchy of lower, darker planes, which you got to get away from and get a higher vibration, higher frequency, and then once your vibration so high, you'll be up here. And it's like, well, actually, I think it's 2 sides of the same coin. In order to reach up here, you need to plant your roots firmer down to the earth. So in order to go to those higher places, actually, you need to go to the darker places. And I say that if people come out of their body and they find themselves in a place they're assuming to be negative, there's probably something there that they need to deal with or look at or think about themselves. So rather than looking at it as hierarchical, I talk about the valley view. So if you imagine you're standing on a hill in a valley, and you are in a river on a boat, and you're following the river through different places, so different planes if you were having an out-of-body experience. You might go through a forest and it might be dark and it might be scary, but then the river might come out into the sunshine, and it might go over the hill and you're on top of a hill and you can see the clouds and it's amazing, and then the river comes down. So it's about going through these experiences and not seeing them as this up-down, top-to-bottom hierarchy, but taking a valley view and going with that flow through.
That sounds like a good way to live as well. So in terms of how trainable this is, like next question, again, I was trying to think of a metaphor, because like I said, I've been in bed, I've done your course, I've been rolling around like an idiot. and it kind of almost feels like this impossible thing. And then I was remembering, I remember when I was learning to ride a bike when I was very young, it also felt completely impossible. And then one day all of a sudden, I've got it. Like, this is it. And I can't really explain how I'm doing it. Is it similar to that, where it just at some point clicks, you just keep trying and trying, you don't know what you're doing wrong? Is that a good analogy for for how this is going to work? Yeah.
Yeah, it is a good analogy. It's a good metaphor. It's when you ride a bike, you have to find your seat, right? You have to find, how do I sit on my seat? Oh, where does my body weight go now? So you have to find where your body weight goes, and then you have to push the pedals. And when you push the pedals, you still got to put one foot on the floor to keep yourself going. So this is like the mind awake, body asleep state, where you're dropping into sleep, you're waking up, you're doing the technique. Oh, you've fallen off again. You're coming back. You're finding your balance, your awareness as you move into these altered and deeper states. So the more better you ride the bike, the more deeper you will end up going into the altered states until that moment where you just keep going on the bike. And that's when we have the tipping point, and then you'll have an out-of-body experience.
And that's what I wanted to pick up on, because you've said a few times, the mind awake, body asleep moment is the key, and the body wants to be so relaxed that it's basically asleep, but somehow I'm still awake. And you've also spoken about, it's almost like you don't want to be able to feel your body, but at the same time, if you lift a phantom limb, it feels like lifting, it really feels like lifting a limb. So I'm kind of, I guess I'm struggling to find what is that sweet spot where I'm in touch with something enough where I feel like I can move it, but it's not my physical body. Is there anything you can say that would help me understand what I'm looking for in that moment?
Practice.
Practice.
No, I'll tell you why. So you will sense something. It will feel like, you question, oh my God, am I actually moving my hand out of my body? Because it feels physically like real, like you're moving your real hand. But it can also feel like static. So it feels like, I'm moving my real hand, but it doesn't feel as solid, but it feels real. So sometimes it can feel like static, or it can feel like, I often say, if there's a sticky toffee stuck on a sofa and you pull it and it kind of goes,
right.
So you can kind of out of the body. So it feels real, but it will also feel slightly different. But it will feel like you're moving something for real, that you will question it. Oh my God, am I coming out of the body? But there will be a sense of knowing that this is happening.
So someone might think or imagine they might really be having the experience, but it's so new and subtle, they might not be certain, but at some point it kind of clicks with like, oh no, this is real. This is it.
Yeah. Well, usually if you're touching on the vibrational state and you're sensing into the energy, you will have that, I'm kind of feeling this. When you actually come to exit, you pretty much know about it. I mean, it's like, oh my God, I'm floating above my body, or I've expanded out, because we don't always float up. But so you will have that it's happening. Oh my God, it's happening right now.
If you're floating, it's probably a good sign that you're...
Yeah, if you're feeling floaty, if you're feeling expansive, if you feel like you're sinking in the sea, because you can sink back, they're all good signs. Feeling of getting bigger, feeling of getting smaller.
And this is like super side question, I guess, but obviously you hear about people in different traditions that claim to levitate. And do you think their physical body's levitating or the astral body's levitating? They come back and they say,
well,
maybe this is way off topic in a way, but...
Well, the Tibetan Buddhists, apparently, if they're fully awakened in this lifetime, in this world, here and now, they're supposedly be able to actually levitate, because they've realised this body, the physical body, they're supposed to be able to levitate because they've realised the absolute nature of mind and that this is a dream.
Cameraman has a question. So, two things. Can you talk about, I don't know if you know this, chemical processes that are going on between those two? Like when you're saying the body's asleep, but the mind is awake. Like and people talk about melatonin, right? It's the chemical in the brain essentially sleep. So how does that work? And then the second thing is, when you step out of your body, can you, as that awake mind, can you, out of body experience, can you turn back and actually
interact
see yourself? Like, could you then stand there above your body, so your mind is actually outside, the thinking part of your head, is here, and your body is on the floor. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah.
Cool, yeah. I'm curious about that as well, if you can.
Yeah, so to answer to the first question about chemicals in the brain, because there's not been enough scientific experiments on out-of-body experiences, basically because they're not valued and there's not enough funding pumped into it, because why do experiments on out-of-body experiences, right? So we don't actually know what's going on chemically too much in the brain during an actual out-of-body experience. At least we've not got enough of that research. What we do know is that we go into gamma when we're in the vibrational state, gamma waves. So
Those are like the quickest ones.
Yeah, so
Fast
gamma's like
ones, yeah.
hyper-focus, when you're in flow state, when a
Insights,
musician
yeah.
is playing, you get insights, gnosis. It's usually, it can be linked with awe as well. So you go into gamma. And they did an experiment on this with monks. So monks, I think, if I remember, they get up to something like 100, 120 hertz in gamma. Around that, don't quote me on it. But when they put the people into the vibrational state, in the brain scanners, they were going up to peaks of 200 hertz in gamma waves. So we know just before an out-of-body experience, so far, we've monitored that people go into gamma.
And for comparison, like beta, like everyday waking is around 30.
I don't actually know.
Yeah, I think so. Beta's around 30 and alpha is the kind of more like meditative states around 15, 10 to 15. You know, you go down to 4, I think, in theta around drink. So 200 is a lot.
It's a lot,
But, it's very different.
And the body, and what's going on with the body in that moment?
You're just completely relaxed, you can't feel it. So this is it's internal. Like advanced meditators can go up to high levels of gamma, right? They're not moving an inch. They're just sat there in meditation position. Okay. But their internal world is going bam, 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 sounds, lights, bangers, like there's all of that going on in the body, but the body isn't moving and looks completely still.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can have an out-of-body experience where you come out, you turn around and you look back at yourself and you can see yourself. I've done that, loads of people have done that, but it does depend on what environment you project into. So we call this objective reality or everyday reality, the human plane. You can come into this is where people spy, you can see your body. You can also come out, turn around and not see your body. If you're on one of the astral planes, which is almost like a duplicate reality of this, you might not see it. Or you might see a hump where your body is. You might see an empty space. Or you might see a fragment of your body.
Could you meet someone else? Like if we're both astral traveling in the same space, you could see them?
Yeah.
But someone else wouldn't be able to see our bodies.
No.
Right? And you can't touch physical objects with your light body. You can't move. But can you touch someone else's light body? Would you be able to feel?
You can have, so there's two things here. So some advanced practitioners say or claim that they've been able to move physical things. I think Robert Monroe is one of those people. Okay. I've never been able to do that. I'm a little bit skeptical, but people have reported that. So who knows? Give it a go. So if there's two people out at the same time, you can't touch as though you would physically touch, even though it feels very real and physical. You sort of merge or meld. Okay. And this is the difference between astral sex and lucid dream sex. I've never had astral projection sex because I also choose not to, but apparently it feels like a merging, almost a merging of soul, energetic, a blending together.
Can you get astral condoms?
From the astral toilet, from the astral machine. Well, because we don't have a body, we haven't got the pregnancy thing.
I mean, this is going really out there now, but I did go to a tantric talk where they talked about having astral babies. This is really out there now. Do you think that's a real thing? Like, are there little astral babies walking around astral planes from?
You would have to question why and how babies are made. Because, I mean, obviously, biologically, there's a man's body, a female's body, so biologically, that makes the form of a baby. So, in the astral plane, why would two light bodies that don't have those biological things, how could they make babies? Unless it was, we talked about the interdependence of this reality. Is it manifesting between two people a potential baby that could come into existence from a connection they've had?
What? Hypothetical.
One question, please. So the body, the astral body, the body that's exited, is it the same shape and colour and as the body that you've just supposedly come out of, or are you just an ethereal piece of energy?
You can be, I like that, you can just be an ethereal piece of energy where you're sort of floating around like this mass, or you can have almost a holographic projection of yourself. When you look down, you sort of see the shape of yourself as though you might kind of be a bit of an apparition or a ghost, or you might just see a flurry of energy or light. This is what I've had. So I've looked down and I see energy. If you've seen the movie Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger from the 1980s, and you look at the alien when he goes into stealth mode,
A bit like that.
I look like
heat
that.
signals.
The Invisible Man, a bit like
Right.
the Invisible Man.
As you know, probably a lot of people have seen there have been these CIA reports that have just been declassified, and this whole thing around spies learning to do this thing. And have you ever met someone who's used this stuff for spying or for some kind of nefarious purposes, or maybe corporate espionage, or trying to retrieve information for very specific purposes? Or
Yeah. No. Maybe we don't put this one in. No, I just haven't.
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Just no one's skilled enough. And if they are, they don't choose to do that.
They're probably
if
not
they're
gonna
that,
tell us.
if they're that skilled, if you've got to that level, you have to do a lot of work, self-work, to be able to get to that level. So you probably, unless you're naturally gifted, you probably wouldn't use it for nefarious purposes.
And again, this is going quite far out in terms of where most people's belief systems are, but I suppose this might shift your belief systems in quite dramatic ways. And I wonder, do you get a sense, so theoretically I suppose someone could be astrally projecting themselves into the space and watching this interview right now.
Yeah.
Having had all the experiences you've had, do you think you're more likely to be able to sense like a presence in the room of like, oh, I think Charlie's here, like, checking on the interview or
Checking up. I can see.
Do people talk about that, or is that a thing where you start to become more sensitive to kind of energies, or maybe ghosts, if people believe in that kind of thing?
Yeah. They do talk about it, and they do say that you feel more sensitive to these sorts of experiences or presences. And, if you look at the effects of near-death experiences, when people come back and they feel more in tune with, let's say, the spirit world or non-physical dimensions. So you get a sense that basically the short answer is yes. And in terms of being able to see others, I've been in the non-physical world and seen physical people walking around in this space when I've been out of body as well. And you can...
Can you say that again? So you've been in the physical world, in your
I've
physical
out of body, been in the physical world, here and now, and then I've seen physical people walking. Yeah, like quite a few experiences. Like I've gone into the street, there's people walking around in the street, there's cars going by, it's just as normal, it's not mystical or it's as it is.
Yeah.
So, and then you move around. And equally, I've been out in the physical plane and seen physical people, normal everyday people, but then I've also seen what could be potential beings or spirits or thought forms, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But the physical people cannot see them, but I can because I'm out on that level. Yeah.
And are they reacting to you? Are they?
Sometimes they react. Sometimes they
like
don't
surprised? Like humans don't normally hang out here.
Sometimes I had one. I was so excited to see this presence. It's very hard to describe in human language. I ran up out of body with no body, but I floated up very quickly with a very excited energy, like, oh my God, it's so good to be here, so meant to see you. And the energy turned and went, you're not going to last very long here. And then turned around and went off.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not very friendly.
No. But then equally, I've had, what some people might call guides that seem to be there for, you assume that they're there for a reason to guide you to something, give you a message or an insight as well. So, and Robert Monroe talks about this. There are all sorts of non-physical beings, and especially William Buellman. He will be like, there are so many physical beings and non-physical beings. There are all sorts. You're going to meet them when you go out of the body. Like, I don't know, it's my terrible American accent.
And do they all speak English?
No, but this is the thing.
English. Yeah.
No, so you don't talk. There's no speech because you have no mouth. So it's almost telepathic communication. So it's like
Transference of meaning.
Right. And through a knowing. It's not dissimilar to some of the things you just know from encounters on plant medicine, I would say.
And I know you were going out for quite some time with someone who teaches lucid dreaming, which of course is quite interesting. These comparisons and so you've got your partner and they're off lucid dreaming and you're off astral projecting. Is there some kind of reality to a lucid dream where you think you could astral project into someone's dream reality, or is it kind of totally
into their dream?
Yeah.
Well, you can go from a lucid dream into someone else's lucid dream. So
Yes.
you don't have to astral project to be able to do that. You can, you might you can springboard from a lucid dream into astral projection. So you could say, oh, are they astral projecting and then dropping into the dream? But effectively, yes, you could go from the astral plane and drop into someone's dream. And what we mean by this is, so assuming that the dream is our own 360-degree psyche, our own psyche, in a very vivid and real way, we're sat within our own psyche. Let's just assume that's what a dream is, our own unconscious mind. When we astral project, it's like we go beyond the borders of our own mindscape, let's say.
To a transpersonal.
And we tap into other non-physical realms. I liken it to a computer. A dream or a lucid dream is the computer of our own mind.
Yeah.
Astral projection is we go through the cable into the internet.
Yeah.
So lucid dream, we have access to the hard drive, the files, and the memory of our own unconscious. And then we go through the cable and we can visit different sites, retrieve external information from different places. So we can drop down into lucid dream through the cable, or we could enter into the astral through the same medium.
And obviously you used to be a dancer before you had this role and or were pursuing this interest. And I also used to be a dancer, and if you've been a dancer, it's quite easy to spot someone else who's had dance training. There'll be something in the posture of their neck, or there'll be some little thing they do with their body, and I'm just curious, if you meet someone and they don't bring up a conversation, can you sometimes get a sense of like, I get a sense that you kind of, sometimes, is there something that this does to the physical body or the way they are in the world, you think it would give you a clue? I think you're like another astral projector without them saying anything, or it could be anyone, there's no signs or clues.
What's coming to mind that's really funny is sometimes when you first had an experience and you know it's real, it can be quite overwhelming. And there's one of my case studies for my master's research, who's now a good friend of mine. I really resonated with him when he had his first experience. He said, I just wanted to go around shaking people going, you can fly, we can all fly. So when you have these experiences, there isn't anything with the physical body, but when you start to talk to them, if you open the door, there'll be certain things that they say where you know they've had an experience. Okay. Certain words that they use, certain terms, certain ways of describing the out-of-body experience, and you're like, they've had an out-of-body experience.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So certain references and just probably an open-mindedness, I imagine.
Yeah, open-mindedness to the conversation as well.
Yeah. Because, like I said at the beginning, even though I consider myself very open-minded, there's something in me that, even though I believe everything you've told me, it's just like, this cannot be true. And I imagine if I had a very visceral experience of this, it would somehow, I can imagine something in me would relax and just be like, oh, this is a thing. This is actually a human experience, or a non-human experience maybe. And so maybe let's just bring it back down to like, okay, this is like a astral projection class for beginners. And I've been practicing it a little bit. I don't think I've necessarily had the vibrational state, but I can definitely drop into what feels like the body in a very, very relaxed kind of, not vipassana, what's it, yoga nidra, the body's so completely relaxed, someone feels like I wouldn't be able to move it, but I'm still quite alert. Maybe just like a couple of tips of, in a case like mine where I don't seem to have easy access to vibrational state, but this whole thing with a very relaxed body seems available to me, would you recommend I just keep coming into that and then seeing if I can gently start to rock and move, or would you recommend I spend more time on kind of trying to generate these visualizations that get the vibration thing going? Or
there's two things that come to mind. I think do a technique more than once. So don't try it once and go, it hasn't worked. Sometimes just getting to grips with the technique itself before it can work can be a thing. So do one technique for quite a while and then see if it works for you, but then try a few more. There's literally hundreds of exit techniques. We learn 2 in this workshop, just 2. And they're both kinesthetic felt sense ones. So there's different types as well as visual ones, more logical ones. So find out what works for you. If you're a certain type of person, if you're very visual, the visual ones might work better. If you're very felt sense, like you said, you're a dancer, it could be that the felt sense ones work more. But then the other thing, sometimes if people are in a dry patch or they've been practicing for quite a while, it could be that there's an unconscious belief or something that needs to be worked with in order to release, in order to then remove that block to be able to have the experience. And we say this in the workshop, fears and limiting beliefs are the 2 biggest blocks. So it could be just that. But some people have seem to be a bit more predisposed to it. You hear about people just having spontaneous experiences, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes that's because they've just hit the right conditions. They've woken up at the right time and they've gone out. I remember David Luke actually saying he got up to go to the toilet and went to put his hand on the door, and his hand went through the door, and he was like, "What?" And he had an out-of-body experience because he'd woken up effectively, but not fully woken up,
right.
but had the intention to get up to go to the toilet. So it was just the perfect conditions for him to have that experience.
Oh,
but then others, if they've got a high absorption rate, meaning they can drop into an experience quickly. For example, if you watch a movie and you can easily cry, relate to the characters, or you can drop into meditation pretty quick, you might have a high absorption rate. And if you do, it means that the techniques that require you to dive deep quickly might work better, and then you might be able to have experiences easier than others. So it also depends on your psychological makeup.
And then, obviously this class gives people a bunch of beginner techniques, or everything they need to know to kind of introduce themselves, to start practicing and have a first out-of-body experience. But you teach much more advanced courses, and there's advanced classes. What, if people get really into it, what can they hope to learn or discover further in your more advanced classes?
Okay, so this is the juicy stuff. The first obstacle is having the out-of-body experience, which is what this class is all about.
Yeah.
Once you have the out-of-body experience, this is when it can get weird, it can get deep, it can get really powerful in terms of self-transformation, all sorts of things. So you can do soul retrieval, like what they do in shamanism, where there could have been a traumatic event in our life, a part of our psyche or soul, let's say, splits off. We can go into planes and places to retrieve that. Because there are subjective environments, intersubjective environments, objective, reality, what is real, and then these are the planes that you hear about in spiritual traditions. Then you can also do shadow work in the same way, meet aspects of our unconscious self that we've denied, disowned, suppressed, and bring it to the surface. We might meet those in what are called thought forms, which seem like real conscious beings, a bit like tulpas in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which is sort of beings made from manifestation of mind that we meet in the astral projection, and you can absorb back into yourself and become more whole. A bit like Carl Jung's individuation through shadow work. You can do that.
So it's therapeutic.
Definitely psychological therapeutic things.
Wow.
You can use astral projection to visit what are called the bardo states if you believe in let's say afterlife, or from the Tibetan Buddhist point of view, the transitory state between life and death. So you can go into these and you could potentially help beings that are stuck in the bardo move on to their next reincarnation.
Cool.
This is what they believe in that system. That's one of the reasons why they practice astral projection. Another reason they practice is to die consciously. So at the point of death, it's their last moment for enlightenment. So if they've been like, Buddha's been sat on this meditation pillow for 80 years now, haven't damn got enlightened, they got one last chance. And the last chance is at the moment after death. If they can recognize they've died, and one of the reasons they can do that is because the out-of-body experience happens at the moment of death, then they can recognize that and they can become enlightened. And then in the bardo state, they can choose where they want to be reincarnated next, rather than the forces of karma pulling them to their next lifetime.
It becomes a pick your own adventure story rather than like this is your is your lot. Okay, well, this has been amazing, and I'm so excited to have all this knowledge now on tape, and that for people to have access to this, and you've made it so accessible and it, in a good way, feel ordinary. And I'm also excited to see how our culture starts to evolve as this stuff becomes more well known, and to see where it goes next. So thank you so much.
That's okay. I want to say one more thing.
Great.
Okay, so for the skeptics, if anyone's watching, so sometimes we can get a bit obsessed with, is it inside the brain, is it outside the brain, you know, this kind of dualistic notion. Actually, whether it's inside or outside or both, doesn't really matter, because we actually have the studies that it improves well-being, decreases the fear of death, can impact relationships, can help with our sense of purpose, increase self-awareness. So regardless of whether it is in the brain, isn't in the brain, doesn't really matter, because it's transformative anyway. Yeah,
people can become healthier, happier. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, what do we do now?
That's it.